where Larry was the night he saw Maud beaten.
It's not important.
I disagree.
I want to know what happened to the money.
Let me start with the Russells because really, how could I not? Everything that is coming in season 4 traces straight back to them, straight back to Bertha and George and everything that cracked open between them by the time season 3 came to a close. And I think that is what makes this teaser hit so hard, because when you see even the smallest glimpse of where these two are headed, you feel the weight of everything that brought them to this point. All the sacrifices, all the fights, all the moments where it looked like they might actually find their way back to each other, only for something to pull them apart again. It is exhausting in the best possible way, and season 4 looks like it is going to push all of that even further. Now, Bertha has always been one of the most fascinating characters on this show, and I think most of us would agree on that. She is complicated in a way that feels completely real. She is not a villain, but she is not exactly easy either. She is a woman who has spent her entire life fighting to be seen, fighting to be respected, fighting to carve out a place for her family in a world that was not exactly rolling out the welcome mat for them. And that fight has cost her. It has cost her friendships. It has cost her peace. And as we saw by the end of season 3, it very nearly cost her George. And that, more than anything, is what broke through all of her armor, because for all her ambition and all her determination, George is her foundation. He always has been. And watching her realize that, really realize it, was one of the most quietly devastating moments the show has ever given us. And George, you know, I have complicated feelings about George. On one hand, I completely understand where his anger is coming from. Watching your daughter go through something painful because of decisions made around her, that is not something any parent gets over easily. But on the other hand, the way he has been putting all of that on Bertha, as if she alone engineered everything that happened, is not fair. It is just not fair, because he was there too. He had the power to stop things and he did not use it, and I really hope season 4 forces him to sit with that. Forces him to look at his own role in everything instead of just pointing the finger. Because Bertha deserves that from him. After everything she has done, after every wall she has climbed and every battle she has fought, she deserves a husband who is willing to be honest with himself. And I think deep down, George knows that. I think that is exactly what makes their storyline so painful to watch, because they are both right, and they are both wrong at the same time, and neither of them quite knows how to bridge that gap. Then there is Gladys, and honestly her situation gives me so much hope going into season 4, because at the end of everything, after all the drama, and all the heartbreak that surrounded her marriage, she actually seems happy. More than happy. She seems settled. She seems like a woman who has found her footing, and with a baby on the way, that changes the entire shape of things. Because if George can see with his own eyes that his daughter is thriving, that she is not suffering the way he feared, then maybe, just maybe, that softens something in him. Maybe that opens a door that has been closed for a long time. And I really think that is where season 4 is going to take us with this family. Not to some perfect resolution, because this show is too smart for that, but to something that feels like progress. Something that feels like these people are finally, slowly, finding their way back to each other. And after all this time, I think we all need to see that. I know I do, because as much as I love the drama, I also love this family, and I want them to be okay. Now let's talk about the couples, because this is where season 4 has the potential to give us some of the most beautiful and most heartbreaking moments we have ever seen on this show. And the teaser, even in its briefness, hints at all of it in a way that made me feel things I was not fully prepared for. Because these relationships have been through so much. Every single one of them has been tested in ways that felt almost cruel at times. And now, going into season 4, it feels like we are finally reaching the point where things either come together or fall apart for good. And I am not sure which possibility scares me more, honestly. Let's start with Marion and Larry, because after everything those two have been through, they genuinely deserve a moment to breathe. You know, their journey has not been simple at all. There were misunderstandings and there were moments of doubt, and there was that whole painful situation with the ring that honestly broke my heart a little. Because when you watch two people who are clearly meant for each other struggle to find the right timing, the right words, the right circumstances, it is frustrating in the most loving way possible. You are sitting there wanting to reach through the screen and just tell them to figure it out already. And they did. They found their way back to each other, and that matters. That means something. Because it was not handed to them. They had to choose each other, and they did. And now season 4 is setting up what looks like the next big chapter for them. And that chapter, if everything goes the way I think it will, involves a wedding. The wedding we have all been waiting for. The one that Marion absolutely deserves after everything she has been through. And I really hope the show gives it to her in the most beautiful way possible, because she has earned every bit of happiness that is coming her way. But as much as I love Marion and Larry, I have to be honest with you. My heart belongs to Peggy and William. It just does. There is something about their story that feels different from everything else happening on this show. Maybe it is because the obstacles they are facing are so much bigger than just personal misunderstandings or family disapproval in the typical sense. What they are up against is rooted in something deeper, something uglier, and watching them navigate that together with so much grace and so much love is genuinely one of the most moving things this show has ever done. Peggy is brilliant and she is strong and she knows exactly who she is, and William sees all of that. He does not just tolerate her ambition. He admires it. He supports it. And in a world and a time period where that was incredibly rare, that means everything, but of course, his mother is still very much in the picture. And if you think for even 1 second that she has softened, or that she has had some kind of change of heart, I would gently suggest you do not hold your breath. Because that woman has made her feelings very clear, and season 4 does not look like it is going to let that storyline resolve quietly or easily. If anything, I think she is going to push harder. Because that is what people like her do when they feel like they are losing control. They double down. They find new ways to interfere. And Peggy and William are going to have to stand firm against all of that, together, which I fully believe they can do. Because at the end of the day, William has made his choice. He has made it over and over again. And no amount of pressure from his mother is going to change what he feels. That much feels certain. And honestly, watching them hold on to each other through all of it is the kind of love story that reminds you why you watch television in the first place. Because what he went through last season was not just dramatic in the way that most storylines on this show are dramatic. It was genuinely heartbreaking. Losing John the way he did, carrying that grief while still having to show up and function and exist in a world that did not give him the space to mourn properly, that was devastating to watch. And the fact that he is now standing at the beginning of something new with Enid, that feels significant. That feels like the show is saying that Oscar's story is not over. That there is still something waiting for him on the other side of all that pain. And I really want to believe in that. I want to believe that season 4 is going to give Oscar the kind of storyline that honors everything he has been through and shows us a man who is slowly, carefully, rebuilding himself. Because he deserves that. He has already gone through so much, and it is finally time for something good to find its way to him now. I cannot move forward without talking about something that the teaser hints at in the most subtle but completely effective way, and that is the shifting social landscape that is going to define so much of season 4. Because the Gilded Age has always been about more than just the personal dramas of these families, as compelling as those dramas are. It has always been about the bigger picture. About a world that is changing faster than the people living in it can fully process. About old money clinging to its power while new money crashes through every door that was supposed to stay closed. And Bertha Russell, more than anyone else on this show, sits right at the center of that collision. She always has. And season 4 looks like it is going to push that theme further than ever before, because here is the thing about Bertha that I keep coming back to. She has spent 3 seasons now trying to break into a world that did not want her. She has thrown parties and hosted dinners and made alliances and burned bridges and done everything in her power to secure a place for her family at the very top of New York society. And she has succeeded in many ways. She has gotten things that people told her she would never get. She has opened doors that were slammed in her face. And yet, at the end of season 3, standing in the wreckage of her marriage and looking at a husband who can barely look at her, none of that success feels like enough. And I think that is the most important thing the show is trying to say about ambition. That it can take you incredibly far. But it cannot take you everywhere. And the places it cannot reach are sometimes the ones that matter the most. So going into season 4, I think Bertha is going to be forced to reckon with that in a way she never has before. Because the social battles she has been fighting, as exhausting and as dramatic as they have been, have also served as a distraction. They have given her somewhere to put all of her energy so that she does not have to sit with the quieter, harder questions about her own life and her own heart. And now, with George pulling away and Gladys building her own life, and the world around her shifting in ways she cannot fully control, those quieter questions are going to get very loud very fast. And I think that is going to make for some of the most compelling television this show has ever produced. Because watching Bertha wrestle, be forced to slow down, forced to look inward, forced to ask herself what she actually wants beyond the next social victory, that is something I have been waiting for since the very beginning. And season 4 looks like it might finally give us that. Now, alongside all of this personal reckoning, the show is also going to continue exploring the broader tensions of the era. And that is something I genuinely appreciate about the Gilded Age, the way it never lets you forget the context. The way it reminds you that these lavish dinner parties and these gorgeous ballrooms exist alongside a world that is deeply unequal and deeply unjust in ways that the people throwing those parties would very much prefer not to think about. And Peggy's storyline has always been the most powerful vehicle for that reminder. Because Peggy exists in this world, but she is not of it in the same way that the other characters are. She sees it more clearly. She understands its contradictions more deeply. And her work as a writer, her determination to use her voice, and her talent to say something that actually matters, has always felt like the moral backbone of the entire show. And I really hope season 4 gives that storyline the space and the weight it deserves. Because Peggy deserves to be at the center of this show, not at the edges of it. And then there is the question of the younger generation as a whole, because I think season 4 is going to lean into that quite heavily. Gladys with her baby on the way. Marion stepping into her future with Larry. Oscar finding his footing with Enid. Jack and Bridget quietly building something real and something genuine between them. All of these young people are carrying the show forward into a new chapter, and the contrast between their world and the world of their parents is going to become sharper and more interesting as the season goes on. Because they are not as bound by the old rules. They are not as invested in maintaining appearances or protecting positions. They are just trying to live and love and figure out who they are. And there is something really beautiful and really hopeful about that, even in the middle of all the drama. Let me talk about Jack and Bridget for a moment, because I feel like their story does not always get the attention it deserves, and that is something I genuinely want to change.